Live. There we go. Hello, everybody. How are you? We are so happy to have Raul from the Church of Satan back on here. It was a lot of fun to have him here last time. And and we got an old 1990s video called Satanic Ritual Abuse, which I think would be a good one for us to watch. And I'm joined by Dorian.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Raul, just so anybody who might have joined us tonight who's not familiar with you know a little bit about you?
Sure, yeah. I'm a reverend with the Church of Satan. I've been a representative for several years. I write for Heathen Harvest, and I do a podcast with them called The Forest Passage, where I talk to underground artists, musicians, and we just recently did like our top 3 of 2017, top 3 releases that should be going out. It's a little late, but should be going out in a couple of days. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Nice. And so, okay, so you do Heathen Haven, and
Heathen
then
Harvest.
Right. Heathen Harvest, and are you involved in the Third Side Network too?
No. Well, I've been a guest on Third Side Network, which is Reverend John Shaw's program, like network. He's got a bunch of shows on his YouTube channel. So he's got his The Devil You Know podcast. He's got several others, and I've been a guest on a few of those. And I've also been on Adam Campbell's Speak of the Devil podcast, or video podcast, and I also do some shows on Radio Free Satan, which is more music oriented, so industrial, ambient, minimal techno, things like that. I do these mixtape podcasts on there.
Now, if somebody wanted to check that out, would they just type that into like Google, or would they have to like go through the Church of Satan's website to get to it?
If you want to check out my stuff specifically, you can go to invisible-war.net, and everything that I do is posted there. So I think it's pretty up to date. A couple of things might be off of there, but I'll be getting them up there soon. That's got links to my myself on Radio Free Satan, articles I've done for the Church of Satan, things I've done for Heathen Harvest, and so on. So that's like a good nexus point for everything that I do. So that's invisible-war.net.
Okay. And I got to ask, because I'm always seeing the Twitter feeds with the Church of Satan, and they just recently had one with with what's her name, one of the Clinton daughters, Chelsea.
Yeah,
Chelsea Clinton and Hooters or something.
Yeah.
Who runs your Twitter? Is it just like one person, or is it like a group of people?
No, it's a group of people. It's several people. So that's why some people have noted as like it's responding like all day, all night. It's like, yeah, because it's a group of people. It's international. It's not all American. Yeah, it's that was funny. That was a funny situation, and I got to talk to Snopes about that. So that was interesting.
Yeah, it was hilarious because I follow them on Twitter, and this whole chain went through. And it started out with somebody saying something about, I don't know exactly how it started, but
it started with Chrissy Teigen. I forget her name. I think that's it. Yeah, she's a supermodel, and so some conspiracy theorists have been going through some of her old tweets where she talks about, I don't know, like pizza, or she makes like some kind of off-color jokes about being a pedo or something like that. So they piece these all together, and they try to come up with this idea that she's some kind of like, she's in that Hollywood elite who like that child abuse ring that supposedly runs Hollywood. So apparently they then tagged Chelsea Clinton to that, because of course she's the head honcho of this ring, right? Or her mother is, apparently. So I think so they said Happy New Year to each other, and then some fake Hooters account said something expletive towards Chelsea Clinton, and then the real Hooters account came on saying, no, that's not us. And then they started to say Happy New Year's to each other, and think Chelsea Clinton said something like, "Oh yeah, it's been a crazy year. even the Church of Satan was being associated with me or something like that, like how we were linked together. So they saw that and said, oh yeah, it's been a crazy year, hasn't it? And being polite, of course. And so she said Happy New Year to us, and then they responded back saying Happy New Year, and the conspiracy theorists went crazy after that.
They just love that.
Yeah. So
Chelsea Clinton said Happy New Year to Church of Satan. She must be a Satanist.
Yeah. Alex Jones picked that up, and went out everywhere, really. Actually, the Washington Post actually covered it too, which was weird. I thought they'd have bigger things to do, but
no, they had nothing to do. Yeah, it was funny because it's even on Snopes.com.
Yeah. So Snopes actually contacted us and asked to speak to a representative. So the central administration sent them over to me and filled me into what was happening. So it was just a basic series of questions. It was, is Chelsea Clinton a member of the Church of Satan? Is she a Satanist? How did this come about? And were you surprised at all by it? And I said, was surprised, yeah, but if anyone's going to say anything nice if anyone approaches us politely, we'll respond the same way. It doesn't matter whether it's Chelsea Clinton or Don Jr. I don't know. Unlikely that anyone from his camp will come over to say Happy New Year to us, but hey, it could happen, and we'd respond just as kindly and politely, as long as that's mutual.
Yeah, it was funny because I think Chelsea Clinton did say something in her tweet to the effect of she doesn't have to, she's not a Satanist, but she can still be respectful with the Church of Satan, which I thought was nice because she's a Methodist. So
yeah, she didn't say specifically. She just said I can be kind to people of other religious orientations or something like that. So
yeah, you're right. I misquoted it.
Yeah, I think eventually she did try to back away from it, saying like, well, I'm a Methodist, I'm married to a Jew. And that was kind of funny too, because then other people were saying, are you trying to compare your Jewish husband to Satanism? And so there's actually some articles from like the Jerusalem Post and some other like Israeli newspapers like, no, being a Jew is it's not Satanism.
Well, have you ever heard of what they call the Synagogue of Satan?
Oh God, yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
So there is this kind of weird conspiracy that like there's this Jewish conspiracy to kind of control the world and is somehow involved with the Illuminati and Satanism. So I can see how they would make that kind of connection.
Yeah. I mean, the Jew has always been the eternal devil, right? So
yeah, they're like, they're always the ones that receive the hate, it seems.
Yeah.
So, all right. Let me see. So, I mean, if you want to be just completely entertained, I highly suggest following the Church of Satan on Twitter because they just react. They just react so calmly and effectively to some of the most absurd, ridiculous questions you'll ever see on Twitter. And they just calmly, they're just like, correcting typos they put in the tweets.
Yeah. I mean, they all try to have fun with it. It's because the amount of craziness that comes through the feed, I can imagine, is you can have a good time with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Following you guys on there, I sit there and I read any tweet that you guys put out, and half the time I'm smiling. So
good.
So let's see. So I guess we'll get into the video, but so I mean, if people have any questions for Raul while we got him on here, put them in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on it, and maybe we can do like a little Q&A session if there's some questions, maybe towards like the end. How does that sound, Raul?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. All righty. So unless there's anything else, I think we'll just go ahead and get into the video. So you're familiar with how we did it before. We'll play the video, and then if one of us wants to comment, just say something, and I'll stop the video, and we'll make our comments, and then we'll continue on with it. And this video is from the 90s, so I have a feeling we're going to be stopping this video a lot.
Well, I'm glad this one's from the 90s. From the 80s there, I could not really connect with it. But being as a 90s kid myself, I'm really looking forward to the good old memories. So
Well, it's funny because I was a teenager in the time, especially in San Francisco, when a lot of the satanic panic stuff was going on. And the Church of Satan was in San Francisco at that time. And there was even a lot of people in the pagan community who were kind of hesitant about the Church of Satan. I mean, they really had, I think the reputation of the Church of Satan has really changed over the years. But early on, they really had, I mean, undeserved reputation.
I mean, I say that's mixed because LaVey was actually pretty. He was thumbing his nose at the pagan occult community, and he did things to kind of troll them in a way. And that's actually a misconception that some people have of LaVey and the Church of Satan, was that, oh, well, you just called yourselves that to piss off Christians, or you just want to troll Christians. It's like, well, actually in the 60s, 70s, he wasn't really, the Christians weren't that much of an issue for him. And he was trolling more so the white light pagan community and the spiritual community. That's why they all warned him against including the Enochian keys, right? They said, like, that's, you don't mess with that. That's that's dangerous, right? So not only did he include them in the Satanic Bible, he modified them and changed them up, and that was like blasphemy, right? So he did actually instigate that a little bit. So when Satanic Panic came along, some of the pagan community, I think, was, kind of like, yeah, had that coming, guys. But at the end of the day, I think when it grew to a boiling point, I think everybody kind of got to on the same side about that and said, yeah, that's not something that we should take lightly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, someday we'll have to get into about the Enochian keys, but I mean, even the Enochian keys are rather questionable about how they originated, the whole story behind it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people take it pretty seriously nowadays. So.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into this. Let me see. Okay, so I'll probably turn my camera off during this. And pull up the video. All right, just bear with me here.
we are experiencing elderly difficulties. Please stand by.
You youngins, you got no damn respect. Back in my day.
Is this what they call boomer posting? But you're not a boomer yet. No.
All right, let me see. Present to everyone. Okay, do you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Man, that's a lot of porn you have on there. Come on, man. One tab at a time.
Hey, I'm into that part. All right, can you guys see it? Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And how's the sound?
Sounds like the
Sounds
80s.
old.
Yeah, sounds like they. But you can hear that awful music.
Oh, when it was playing, yeah.
Okay, all right. Sounds really bad.
Sounds like the old videos I had to watch in Sunday school. So
Yeah. Really bad. Wow, it's 240p.
Followers of Jesus Christ Incorporated. You rose from the cross and your prophet margin. So
And we all know who this is.
Oh God.
Yep.
Oh, I love that
It's
haircut.
a very young David Carrico.
Whew.
Before he got fat and old.
Hair is still the same.
Yeah,
Just
pretty much
darker.
darker. Yeah.
I'm David Carrico. My wife Donna and I operate a ministry in Evansville, Indiana. We have spent several years researching various aspects of the occult and have been used by God to lead several occultists to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. One of the areas of research which we have specialized in is SRA, or Satanic Ritual Abuse. We have a burden to expose the truth about SRA and to help promote understanding.
You do have the burden of proof to explain it and to prove it.
For its victims. In this video, I want to share with you several aspects of SRA. We will start by defining ritual abuse. We will find within that definition several elements of satanic ritual abuse as described by survivors.
I'm sure.
We have a working definition. We will look at evidence of its existence. Then we will examine the claims of those who say that satanic ritual abuse does not occur. And finally, we will look at the origins of SRA and how the practice of human sacrifice has been propagated to the present day through the mystery religions. SRA involves crimes against children that are so horrible that many people don't want to believe it exists. I assure you that I don't want to believe it either, but due to the evidence, I have no choice but to acknowledge that SRA is a reality. 4 states have passed laws making the ritualistic abuse of children illegal. A legal definition of ritual abuse can be found in a bill passed by the legislature of the state of Illinois. The law went into effect in January of 1993. The act states that a person is guilty of a felony when he commits any of 7 acts upon a child or in the presence of a child during a ceremony or ritual. A person commits ritual abuse when he...
Just for a point of clarification, according to the FBI, from a 1992 study, there's a difference between abuse, like, sexual abuse, physical abuse, ritual abuse, and then satanic ritual abuse, which is actually a term that they do not use. And so they do make a difference. They make a distinction between abuse and ritual abuse. So ritual abuse is something that is reoccurring. It's almost becomes habitual.
1, actually or in simulation, tortures, mutilates, or sacrifices any warm-blooded animal or human being. 2, forces ingestion, injection, or other application of any narcotic drug, hallucinogen, or anesthetic for the purpose of dulling sensitivity, cognition, recollection of, or resistance to any criminal activity. 3, forces ingestion or external application of human or animal urine, feces, flesh, blood, bones, body secretions, non-prescribed drugs, or chemical compounds. 4, involves the child in a mock, unauthorized, or unlawful marriage ceremony with another person or representation of any force or deity, followed by sexual contact with the child. 5, places a living child into a coffin or open grave containing a human corpse or remains. 6, threatens death or serious harm to a child, his or her parents, family, pets, or friends, which instills a well-founded fear in the child that the threat will be carried out. Or 7, unlawfully dissects, mutilates, or incinerates a human corpse. Several other states.
He didn't say where he got this definition, did he?
No.
Pass laws concerning ritual abuse of children. The definition in each case is similar. In order to define satanic ritual abuse, we must first identify the nature of Satan. Satan is a fallen angel who wants to usurp the place of God in worship. Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 14, discusses the fall of Satan from heaven when he tried to be like God.
I think he's actually talking about Lucifer. Yeah.
Yeah.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Satan and a third of the angels who followed him were cast out of heaven.
Again, he's talking about Lucifer, but he keeps saying Satan, which is
like interchangeable for them, really.
Yeah, it is, but it's really not. I mean, Hasatan is from the Old Testament is the adversary, the one who challenges man, and then Lucifer is the fallen star or the rising star.
Yeah, I mean, in the Hebrew kind of mythology or in the Old Testament, it was more like a force. It wasn't something personified. It wasn't a actual personal thing. It was something that people would come under the influence of the adversary or something like that. And even before, I think the Old Testament, it would apply, the term Satan would apply to people. It would apply to usurpers, or it was just a thing the person was. It was a Satan or a Hasatan. But yeah, later became the Satan, Lucifer being the rebel against God.
Yeah, okay. So it started out kind of like a description, and then later on they personified it into a being. Yeah,
I mean, Lucifer itself. I mean, it's I mean that all this comes from translations, right? So translations into Greek and into Latin from the Hebrew. So there are different translations of different terms and wordings, phrases in the Bible. So that's where all these variations come from.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the actual Bible, there is no Lucifer. I mean, that's not a word in Hebrew. So,
good point. Yeah. Oops.
They are now commonly referred to as demons rather than fallen angels. Satan commands a host of demons whose nature is identical to his own. 1 Peter 5:8 warns us to be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. In his first letter to the Corinthians, Paul wrote, But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. Paul knew that all pagan religions worship demons rather than the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible.
Damn those pagans.
Yep.
One thing I find funny there, though, in my own videos, I cover a lot of racists who actually use that exact passage to justify about, oh, the white people are the devils, or, oh, the black people are the devils. Here's evidence. And that exact passage he used, I hear that so often with supremacists and stuff like that. It's just amazing.
Yeah. They just use that to their own advantage. They twist and interpret it to basically justify and purify their beliefs or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's another one that I heard a lot of the times when West Bureau would do their little things outside of different things around here in Washington. That is normally their go-to scripture as well. Because if you don't believe in what they believe, or if you just live, you're automatically sinning. But they think that you're the devil even if you don't believe what they do. So, but that's West Bureau. Everybody knows they're fucked up.
Yeah. It just can't win.
Demonic ritual abuse would involve any ritual abuse which took place in a ceremony which gave praise or worship to one or more demons. We know from Paul's writings that all pagan gods are demons. In warfare, a general is often given credit for the accomplishments of his troops. Since all demons have the same nature as Satan, and Satan is the leader of all demons, satanic ritual abuse includes any ritual abuse which takes place during the praise or worship of any demon or false god.
Oh, I love that logic. So because they believe that all pagan gods are devils, anybody who praises those devils or whatever they do is actually the responsibility of the devil.
Yeah, and that goes back to like the historic kind of definition, the loose definition of Satanism. It was something that, you know, was applied to pagans, any non-Christians, to Christian heretics, to the Jews and Muslims. It was anybody who was the other was deemed, you know, satanic.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, especially Muslims and Jews were considered to be satanic back in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, and you see that a lot right now too. A lot, and we get, at the Church of Satan, we get a lot of that too, saying, "Oh, you're in line with the Muslims because the Muslims actually worship Satan. Like Muhammad is actually a prophet of Satan, right?" And that's like, no, he's a prophet of Abraham, and that's an Abrahamic religion. Has nothing to do with us.
Mm-hmm.
Our working definition of satanic ritual abuse then requires that the ritual abuse occur as part of a ritual which worships Satan, another demon, or any false god. You may be surprised to know that satanic ritual abuse is really not a new problem. God spoke of satanic ritual abuse to Moses in Leviticus chapter 20, verses 1 through 8. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Again, you shall say to the children of Israel, whoever of the children of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones."
So I guess he's just going to go on for however long, just repeating Bible passages. He hasn't gotten to any actual evidence yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. A lot of their evidence is the Bible. So
Yeah. It's like they don't have any other evidence except that. So
what's kind of funny is they say that they don't use Leviticus anymore because it doesn't count anymore. Yet they still use it all the time to say that this is proof. So I'm a little confused when it comes to Christians on that. Some say, "Oh, Leviticus doesn't count. The Old Testament was an old law and things have changed." And other people are like, "No, it all counts." So I get confused when it comes to any of this stuff when they're like, "Well, Leviticus says."
Right. Yeah, exactly. They just pick and choose, and some Bible passages. I mean, I've had like comments with people in my comments section about that, and I'll mention something and they'll say, "Well, you don't take the Bible literal." And I'm like, "But no, you do take the Bible literal because there's certain passages you do take literal." And they'll say, "Oh, well, not everything is literal." It's like, okay, make up your fucking mind. Either you take everything literal or you don't take everything literal. You can't just like pick and choose.
I mean, it's like, is the Bible like divine inspiration from God? Is it direct communication from God or not? Right? So you can't have it. So either it is or it isn't. It's either a social document relative to its time, or it's directly communicated by God. And if it's directly communicated by God, then how can you not take it literally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, if you read the Bible and you take it literally, it doesn't make any sense. But if you look at the Bible and you read it and you take it metaphorically, it makes better sense. It doesn't make sense, but it makes much better sense.
My face against that man, and will cut him off from his people, because he has given some of his descendants to Molech to defile my sanctuary and profane my holy name. And if the people of the land should in any way hide their eyes from the man when he gives some of his descendants to Molech, and they do not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut him off from his people and all who prostitute themselves with him to commit harlotry with Molech. Notice here that God speaks not only against those who would sacrifice children to the demon, but also all those who know that the sacrifice is happening and don't try to stop it.
What?
Continuing to read. And the person who turns after mediums and familiar spirits to prostitute himself with them, I will set my face against that person and cut him off from his people. Sanctify yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am the Lord your God, and you shall keep my statutes and perform them. I am the Lord who sanctifies you.
There's that passage again from Leviticus, Loki.
I hope that he actually also includes Leviticus 20, chapter 20, verse 9. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. That is the next verse right after this.
No, they conveniently didn't have enough room to put that in there.
Ah, what a shame. Maybe if he made the text a little bit smaller, he could have included that part too.
Yeah,
because that sounds like a little. That sounds pretty satanic to me. So
I'm gonna speed this up some because I don't know how much longer he's gonna go on talking about this crap. Because I want to get to like whatever bullshit evidence he has.
The Bible tells us that children were put to death in worship of Moloch. Additionally, sexual acts were committed as part of the ceremonies. Several other scriptures deal with the sacrifice of...
I don't know why, but this sounds great.
Yeah, sounds like a chipmunk.
Verse 21,
Exactly.
any of the seed pass through the fire to Molech. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. God detested the sacrifice of children to false gods so much that he wanted the Israelites to kill all men who sacrificed their children. God told Moses that he would turn his face against any man who failed to kill another man he knew had sacrificed his children. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 31 deals with children who were sacrificed to gods other than Molech. And the Abites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in fire to Adremelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. Verses 16 and 17 of 2 Kings chapter 17 deal with some of the Israelites sacrificed children.
This is like these are like Star Trek names. That's what they sound like to me. They sound like races in Star Trek.
And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire and used divination and enchantments and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Jeremiah chapter 19, verses 3 through 5 reveals that the judgment of God will fall upon any nation which allows child sacrifice. And say, hear ye the word of the Lord, O kings of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Behold, I will bring evil upon this place, the which whosoever heareth, his ears shall tingle. Because they have forsaken me, and have estranged this place, and have burned incense in it unto other gods, whom neither they nor their fathers have known, nor the kings of Judah, and have filled this place with the blood of innocents. They have built also the high places of Baal, to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings unto Baal, which I commanded not, nor spake it, neither came it into my mind.
I think all sermons should have this done to them because, dear Lord, it sounds more entertaining that way.
I'm sorry, what?
All sermons should be sped up like this because it sounds so much better.
Yeah, I'm not into listening to sermons. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward it to here because I think this is about
within the mystery religions. The teaching of the mystery religions has been preserved in the literature and practice of several secret societies.
Okay, now he's getting something that might be a little more interesting.
The very fact that several states have enacted laws concerning ritual abuse demonstrates that the problem is still with us. This is really...
No, it means that people have, out of fear, probably petitioned their governors and their state legislation to enact laws. Doesn't mean that they had to do it because of the...
Not surprising, because the nature of man has not changed. The legal definitions are broad for several obvious reasons. The element of religion has not been placed in the law to prevent perpetrators from using freedom of religion as a defense. If laws applied only to satanic ritual abuse, some who worship Lucifer would deny that Lucifer and Satan are the same being. That may sound absurd, but I have seen documents from organizations which lift up Lucifer, yet deny the existence of Satan.
Because they are essentially two different beings. They're both made up, but they're both two separate. The mythology, they're separate mythological characters. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Additionally, all ritual abuse does not contain satanic elements. The broad definition within the Illinois law serves to convict without having to prove Satanism per se. While most ritual abuse cases never come to trial, there have been several criminal prosecutions that resulted in convictions. In most cases, the ritual aspect was not introduced in court, but was clearly indicated by the accounts of the victims. Numerous civil cases incorporating claims of ritual abuse have been successfully litigated. In August 1984, there were two cases which resulted in convictions. In Niles, Michigan, Richard Markman, the husband of a daycare operator, was convicted. In Miami...
Yeah, but for what? See, this is where I get into it with people like this, because they'll make claims that because the kids said that there was people running around in robes and candles, and supposedly stars were carved into them, or they were put into made to eat feces, and all these really crazy, absurd things that kids would probably see in movies, or something that somehow this was actually valid information and was brought into a case, and people were actually convicted. Well, not really convicted just on that, but this was brought into the case, and because it was brought into the case, it became a satanic ritual abuse case, which it wasn't. I mean, the two people, or the people who have been convicted of abuse at for example, the Oak Hill case, there was a medical examiner who had looked at the under sexual examination, a physical examination of a young girl, that it looked like she had had sexual penetration. But they also found out later on, and this is what actually overturned the case, was that this is actually how sometimes a woman's, I don't know the exact term for it, vulva or the hymen, or I think it was not the hymen, the vulva. Sometimes it actually, it's normal. It does happen that way, and it does kind of form that way sometimes. So that's one of the reasons why that the Oak Hill Seminary case was recently overturned. Then there was another case, I think, in the San Francisco Presidio Daycare Center, where the kids were they had caught a venereal disease, and so because one of the people in the daycare center also had that venereal disease, that was the means of the conviction. So it's always it's like there's elements of it that are actually part of the crime, like what there's physical evidence that is brought in, or other evidence, actual evidence is brought in. And then the people who bring in all these crazy stories about rituals and candles and people in robes, it doesn't help the case. If anything, it just clouds it and makes it into a circus, and they just need to look at the factual evidence of these things, not all these other crazy stuff that is included.
Yeah, and he's also sorry. Didn't mean to turn that echoing, actually, so I was interrupting somebody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so he's not differentiating between satanic ritual abuse and ritual abuse, and like you said earlier, you can be a Christian and be guilty of ritual abuse. This is, in these examples he's going through here, I'm not seeing that distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Frank and Ileana Fuster went to prison because of abuses at their Country Walk Daycare Center. The case has been impressively documented in the book Unspeakable Acts and in the ABC docudrama of the same title. In September 1984, in Malden, Massachusetts, the Fells Acre daycare case culminated in guilty verdicts against Violet Amirault and her daughter Cheryl Amirault Lefebvre.
Yeah, but these are probably cases where there was some kind of neglect or some kind of abuse that actually happened. I mean, I'm not familiar with these cases, but I don't see any connection between any actual, mysterious occult or satanic group behind it.
Yeah, he's just naming off cases that share that same name.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes daycare centers are found abusing kids, physically abusing them, maybe even sexually abusing them, maybe neglecting them. Yes, these things do happen, but it doesn't mean that there's some kind of a satanic cult behind it.
Right.
They were given sentences of from 8 to 20 years. In December 1987, in Roseburg, Oregon, 3 Gallup...
Oh, I love how they put Christian in parentheses.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
quotes.
See, that's exactly what I was talking about. It's like, if a Christian abuses kids and it turns out that the Christian is schizophrenic or a pedophile, they will always say, well, he was under influence of Satan, therefore it's a satanic ritual abuse case.
Yeah, and then I had that. Yeah, and then I had this one argument with a person, in a comment section, and they were talking about how these people who do these acts and they're practicing the occult. How do you know it wasn't the occult that influenced it? And I was like, well, do you know how many Christians are in jail for felony charges? It's like, so you're telling me that the people who committed felonies who are in jail, they did it because they're Christian, or they did it because they're criminals?
Yep.
It's like, no, they did it because they were criminals. Them being Christian didn't have anything to do with it. It's the same thing with people who practice the occult. If they actually do commit murder or a felony or something, what does it have to do with just because they study the occult? That doesn't mean that one is influencing the other.
Right. Yeah. Like, go ahead.
Huh?
No, I was just going to say, the people talk about satanic music and satanic arts being an influence on people. It's like, well, how many people are in jail who happen to listen to rap music or happen to listen to hard rock or country music, or there's probably way more people who listen to all these mainstream forms of music who are committing crimes than satanic metal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, rock and roll music and D&D, all those things are all brought in.
Yeah.
Somehow influencing teenagers to commit crimes.
I mean, honestly, if they can do something stupid, they would say it's because I was influenced by Satan because I'm pagan. No, I was influenced by a coworker pissing me off to the point of no return. But I mean, it's like, yeah, a murder was committed by a person who listened to too much Taylor Swift.
Yeah, right.
I want to see that headline one day. That would be great.
Taylor Swift made me do it.
Well,
that'd be perfect.
Yep. Zena LeVay, right? And so say.
Well, there have been, yeah, and we'll probably get to it, but
daycare facilities were the scene of crimes that resulted in the conviction of a minister, his wife, and his son. Mary Lou Gallup's conviction was reversed because of a discovery violation, but Ed Gallup Sr. and Ed Chips Gallup Jr. both served their sentences. In the same month, in Lehigh, Utah, Alan Hadfield was convicted of abusing his own children in a case in which many adults in the community were identified as perpetrators of satanic ritual abuse.
How? How was this identified in this manner?
The case was documented in the PBS program Promise Not to Tell. In September 1988 in Santa Rosa,
Hold on real quick. Of course, it had to be documented by PBS because that's a credible website and a credible channel to watch. I mean, it has no biases, right?
Yep.
I love it how that they say that just because it's all true because one person said it's true, and that's normally the basis of a PBS show.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen the show, but I mean, you can spin anything you really want if you just listen to certain people and not, talk to other people. So I mean, I'm not familiar with this show or how they put it together or what evidence they used for it,
Or what even conclusions it may have drawn. It may have drawn completely different conclusions than what he's presenting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also it's kind of like, I mean, this FBI report by Kenneth Lanning is just, I mean, it just really lays it all out. It's one of the reasons why they wrote up this report and started to implement this was because people were just including random things. They were like, people would say stuff and they would include it in there. They would say, oh, well, they had a book by Aleister Crowley in their library, so that brought into it. Or they had a statue of Adonis or whatever. They started including all these things which had really nothing to do with the case. Even if somebody carves like a pentagram into somebody's chest, it still doesn't matter. It doesn't make that an actual satanic ritual. Sometimes crazy teenagers will do stupid shit, and one of them is to to whatever they believe they're doing in their crazy meth induced psychosis. They believe that they're creating, like, they'll draw 666 or pentagrams or whatever, but it doesn't mean it has anything to do with an actual satanic cult going around killing people.
Or how many crimes are committed with people who wear a Christian cross.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or how many people, believe that Jesus Christ told them to kill them. I mean, recently there was a case, I can't remember exactly what it was, but where the guy killed his daughter because he said that Jesus told him to kill her because she was evil. She was possessed by a demon or something.
Yeah, and a lot of them don't like to go into the fact of people who've been killed during exorcisms, but that's mostly Catholics, or other things. I mean, I grew up with kids who were goths who would write 666 or carve it into their arms all the time, and half of them are normal people of society now. So honestly, anyone can write those symbols, write them, use them, and claim that, oh, they're this or that. But not all of them go out and kill people. I mean, if you look at the inmate numbers of how many are Christian, how many are Catholic, how many are Satanists, how many are non-denominational, how many are atheists, and so on, you'll see the majority of everyone will choose Christian.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
Darrell Ball and Charlotte Thrakill plea bargained on molestation charges and were sentenced to substantial prison terms. The prosecutor's opening statement referred to the ritual aspect of the crimes, and the child victims described satanic ceremonies that included murders. In May 1989 in Stuart, Florida, James Toward pled guilty to charges arising from the sexual abuse of over 100 children at the Montessori school where he was principal. 6 children testified. Toward received a 27-year sentence. His secretary received 10 years. In April 1990 in Thurston County, Washington, Paul Ingram, a former Thurston County Sheriff's deputy, confessed shortly after being confronted. Ingram had been involved in ritual abuse for many years. 2 other law enforcement officers allegedly were involved, but charges eventually were dismissed because the victims were too traumatized to appear in court. Ingram was sentenced. In December 1990, in Akron, Ohio, Philip and Michael Schmidt pled guilty to molesting children who were attending the daycare operated by their grandmother, Hazel Riggs, who was sentenced on a lesser charge. The Denver Post story on the case included ritual allegations by a child victim. Prosecution was handled by the Attorney General's office. In March 1992, in Mansfield, Ohio, 2 teenage babysitters at the First Presbyterian Church were sent to prison for abusing children during church functions. Lawrence Rode, age 19, was sentenced to 14 years, and Scott Butner received from 5 to 10 years. Children all told of being taken from the church and witnessing murder, cannibalism, and mutilation of corpses.
So this is one of those cases where you really have to be very careful when you're interviewing children, like again in that FBI report by Kenneth Lanning, because often, I mean, he put it very well in this report. I'm summarizing it, obviously, I'm not quoting it directly, but kids often will sometimes create fantastical stories. They don't always understand things. And so you have to sort of, when you're listening to the kid, you have to understand what they might be embellishing and what they're saying is actually something that happened. Like they may not be familiar with the, you know, anatomy of an adult, but they might be familiar with, you know, other things that happen, like movies or whatever, and they will include this. And so when you're interviewing a child, especially about a, you know, something that may have happened to them or a crime that they may have witnessed, you really have to be careful about what they're saying that is actually true, what they're maybe imagining, and maybe what they're including because they think you want it in there, or they think that that's what something that is evil or something that is bad that people do. So,
and it should also be noted, like in this case with Ingram here, that a lot of these ideas of, because there are cases of people who have abused children ritually with and conjured Satan and things like that. The thing to keep in mind though is that where did they get these ideas? And Ingram, he was a Pentecostal, and they're constantly told that Satan enters your mind and controls you, and Satan makes you commit crimes and do all these things. And in many cases, this is the kind of environment they come from, right? A lot of these abusers are Christians, right? And when they're committing acts of abuse, they will then conjure Satan and blame it on Satan and said, Satan made me do this. And, you know, while they're doing these acts, they may say that term, but this is nothing satanic about it. It's actually very Christian, because all these ideas that Satanists would do this or Satan would make you do this is a Christian idea. And these people are broken, insane people, and they now have been given an image to use to blame it on, right? So it's true that there are people who have abused kids, but they're not satanic. They're actually Christian who have been armed with that imagery to use.
It's almost like they're trying to like scapegoat him or blame it on, saying, I didn't do it, it was Satan that possessed me, that made me do this.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I looked up, the whole Ingram thing here online, and apparently there was a technique of what would be like memory hypnosis, but there's claims that the person doing the hypnosis actually put these suggestions into the heads and stuff like that. So when they were under this hypnosis, they were under the influence of what the person was putting them through. Like I'm just reading it here. I'll post the link in the chat about how the hypnotist would be like, oh, was there any incest? Are you sure there wasn't any ritual incest and this and that? And it's just crazy stuff. Like the techniques used to get these confessions and stuff is really, by today's standards, would be really murky and really dirty and stuff like that.
Right. Is that what do they call it? Memory regression therapy?
That's memory. Memory regression hypnosis.
Okay. Yeah. So they supposedly place these people into hypnosis and then talking to them and saying stuff to kind of get, right. Exactly. It's kind of like, it's leading them to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And they would do that with children too. But it's much more easier with kids because kids will kind of play into it and they don't exactly understand the ramifications of their actions, whereas an adult understands they understand the ramifications of their actions.
Yeah,
thanks.
And there's also like really hard interrogation techniques on Ingram, and he may not exactly be the brightest person, and through all this pressure, there's some cases of coerced confessions and back and forth on different statements on what. So it's very inconsistent. Even in a case like this, it's hard to say what exactly happened, but this idea that there's like this network of Satanists that are operating in the shadows and committing these acts. It's like, no, and any of these instances that come up are broken people from broken families or people with mental illnesses who are actually Christians that are committing these crimes.
Yeah. So, I mean, all these cases that David Carrico is bringing up, I mean, obviously these are cases that were reported to the police and investigated, and they investigated all these, and the people, they've been tried and jailed when responsible for them. So a lot of these cases have already been gone through, they've been researched and witnesses interviewed and all this, and people are, found guilty and sentenced because of it. But a lot of the elements that interfered with this was the satanic element. I mean, if they believed that all these things people were reporting were a satanic cult, I mean, it would have been estimated there were like thousands and thousands of these cults in various parts of the world operating, and it would just be impossible, all of these things are isolated. They're not all connected to anything, which is one of the things that they always like to that they like to assume or say that is happening.
About 60 children have urged that charges be filed against other church members who allegedly were involved, but the grand jury has declined to indict anyone else. In April 1992 in Edmonton, North Carolina, Robert Kelly, owner of the Little Rascals Daycare Center, was found guilty on 99 out of 100 counts of sexual abuse and sentenced to 12 consecutive life terms. 12 children testified in court, and one young victim described how the perpetrators would pray, "Oh, devil, destroy these children." As of April 1993, one other defendant had been convicted and 5 others remained to be tried.
Oh, this is the Oak Hill Daycare Center, which was recently they were released from jail and exonerated, and actually compensated financially for being wrongly convicted and sentenced.
Yep.
So that's good. This is the case. Well, maybe they'll go into it.
Was in 1992 in Austin, Texas. Francis and Daniel Keller were convicted. One victim disclosed how he was told that his arm bone had been taken out and replaced with Satan's.
And this was actually introduced in court.
Yeah, and that other case that he talked about, the Little Rascal case, that actually was overturned. Turns out the kids were conditioned in their testimony. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, he's picking out the most damning parts of these cases. At least I'm assuming he is. I'm assuming he's probably pulling out the parts of these cases that are most damning to support his side. So if this is the most damning that he can bring out in all of these cases, I mean, that's ridiculous.
He watched them as they poured jars of blood on his arm.
Oh, we got a new subscriber.
Ritual abuse, and more specifically, satanic ritual abuse in the name of false gods, does occur today, as these convictions prove. These cases represent only the tip of the iceberg. There are many victims who never come forward due to fear or, in some cases, death. Ritual abuse is not conducted in public, but always occurs in seclusion, where the risk of exposure is minimized. Those who have accidentally discovered rituals in remote areas have sometimes become victims themselves, and since ritual abuse participants are reluctant to testify against one another, many cases cannot be prosecuted because of a lack of sufficient evidence. I have become concerned with the recent criticism by those who would deny the very existence of SRA. This controversy has made it even more difficult for the victims of these satanic crimes to get help.
How would that prevent somebody from getting help? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're a if you believe you're a victim of a crime, it's just whatever. Just because somebody doesn't believe it happened to you doesn't mean you wouldn't benefit from counseling or whatever it is you think would benefit you.
In some cases where substantial evidence could have been provided, the cases were not investigated diligently because the prosecutors doubted the reality of SRA. Many times, prosecutors are reluctant to mention satanic elements of the crime when the case comes to trial, thinking that it will make conviction more difficult.
It does. I mean, it does. If you commit a murder, or you sexually assault someone, or you sexually assault a child, your religious background or whatever doesn't have anything to do with that. The fact of the matter is you committed a crime, and that is what you're being tried for. So yeah, I bet you a lot of people are concerned about introducing, little Jimmy believes that his arm was replaced by a satanic arm, or, blood was poured upon such and such, because it just clouds the issue. The issue is, did an inappropriate sexual encounter happen between an adult and a child? If yes, then proceed. If not, then it doesn't, that's what a whole trial is about. Did this actually happen, or did it not happen? So,
yeah, it kind of poisons the well in cases of actual abuse, because they want to, during these interrogations of the kids or these interviews with the children, they'll lead them on. Maybe they were abused, but then they'll say, well, did they ritually abuse you? Did they do this? Did they, they'll implant these images to make this traumatic event more, satanic or more evil. So they could have been abused, but now you've turned it into a satanic ritual abuse, so it could piggyback on this bigger kind of conspiracy. Now you've actually poisoned that well, right? So that's a terrible effect of that, and this kind of hysteria to tie it into just greater conspiracy. Actual abuse may actually be neglected.
Right. And I mean, again, it's the crime that happens. Like if you're out in the woods and you're conducting an occult ritual or a ritual period, that's not illegal. You can do that. I mean, as long as you have permits, if it's, private or public property or whatever, that's fine. That's not illegal. However, if you go into the woods and you murder someone, now you've committed a crime. Now you've committed murder. So to conflate those two things, it doesn't, from a legal point of view, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you commit murder. You committed murder, period. And so whenever they introduce other elements into it, it just, again, you're right. It just poisons the well, and it conflates, and it really distracts from the actual facts of the case. But anyhow, let's move on.
Sometimes prosecutors and others in the criminal justice system are reluctant to do an adequate investigation in a particular case because they deny the existence of SRA. Their denial determines the course of the investigation, or rather, it prevents an adequate investigation from ever occurring.
No, it's actually the opposite. You don't bring every single little thing into a case. You bring in relevant information and relevant facts. If you start bringing in all kinds of other stuff, it's going to, the judge is going to get frustrated with it and toss out the evidence. you know, if it's not relevant to the case, you do not introduce it. You only introduce relevant information, because it's just, you know, it's just ridiculous to pour through mountains of evidence that have absolutely nothing to do with the facts or the case or anything.
An excellent example of a law enforcement officer with this mindset is Ken B. Lanning. Lanning is a special supervisory agent assigned to the Behavioral Science Unit at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Lanning has stated for the record, after all the hype and hysteria is put aside, the realization sets in that most satanic recalled activity involves the commission of no crimes, and that which does usually involves commission of relatively minor crimes such as trespassing, vandalism, cruelty to animals, or petty thievery. This bias regarding the existence of hardcore satanic crimes.
They're not happy with him.
Yeah.
They actually believe that he was like involved in the satanic cult. That's why he was covering all this up.
Yeah, and we get that at the Church of Satan. You know, when we'll put out the FBI report of when they investigated the Church of Satan during the Satanic Panic, and they found that there was no evidence of anything like that, anything like satanic ritual abuse. They would, you know, these conspiracy tards would come back and say, like, oh well, the FBI, you know, they're in it, so they're part of it, right? So who would trust the FBI? Fake news. So, you can't win.
Yeah, you can't. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you, because I've had that same, not about the Church of Satan, but I've had the same thing. Like, I've talked to people, well, why? Okay, so why don't you report this to police? If you're aware that this happened, why don't you report it to the police? Oh, it doesn't. I reported to the police. It doesn't matter because the police are involved. And I said, okay, well, why don't you take it to the FBI or the CIA? Oh, the FBI and CIA are involved. I'm like, okay, so why don't you take it to the United Nations if you believe that our entire system is corrupt? Oh, no, the United Nations is part of it. It's like, how the fuck are you going to win? I mean, if it's all one grand conspiracy that involves our government, the police, FBI, CIA, United Nations, become one world Illuminati government ruled by this Jewish lizard elite, you're fucked. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh man, it's insane.
Time has forced him to reach some ridiculous conclusions. The 1988 ritual murder trial of Clifford St. Joseph in the state of California is a case in point. These are the documented facts in the case. The corpse was mutilated so badly that it could not be identified. The corpse had been sodomized. The wrist, ankles, back, and buttocks had been slashed. The testicles were mutilated. The blood had been drained from the body. The right eye had been removed and the eye socket filled with hot wax.
This is just disgusting.
All I can see is somebody's a sick freak that did this. Not that I don't care what they believe in. They're just a sick, twisted freak that should have been put in jail and left there.
Yeah, I mean, like,
if not locked away.
Yeah, exactly. Like some of the cases that we watched on this show before, which is all like satanic crimes that happened. I mean, it was just sick individuals, one after the other, just doing these crimes that have oh, and here it is. This is the whole reason why it was satanic, because the pentagram was carved into the chest of the victim. That's the whole thing that connects it.
Yeah.
Yep.
A pentagram was carved into the chest of the victim.
That's it. I mean, yes, there are sick fucking people out in this world, and they do disgusting, fucked up stuff. And, you know, I'm a firm believer in the death penalty. I think that if you're found guilty of doing something really heinous and you have not been proven innocent after 10 years, then yes, implement the death penalty. But that's just me, and I know people have different feelings on that. But yeah, there are sick people in this world. They are just sick, and you know, they do some disgusting, horrible things. And I don't care what symbols they draw or carve into somebody. It doesn't mean that, you know, if they drew a cross on them, I wouldn't assume that they did it because they love Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
After reviewing the evidence, the FBI's Mr. Lanning determined that it was not a satanic murder, but a homosexually motivated sex crime.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I remember that.
saw that one.
Yeah.
It's
But
not just satanic, it's the gay Satanists, the gay Satan Illuminati now. So,
And we all know that the gay satanic people are the worst.
Like, totally. I know.
Not
I
only
remember
are Satanists bad, but gay Satanists are really, really bad.
I know, and they're like, well, it's a homosexual motivated crime. How exactly is it? Just because of maybe he had gay sex? Let's put that maybe out there. But it made it even worse for not only if you're homosexual at that time, but if you were anything not Christian at that time. I remember that problem going around, people blaming their cousin who was gay for doing it. So I remember reading different police reports on some of these things because I got bored one day and decided to look up some of these things that he claims are satanic murders. Any of them.
Yeah.
The bias of Mr. Lanning and some others is so extreme that one wonders what evidence would be required to convince them that satanic ritual abuse exists.
Yeah, but okay, so he's works for the FBI. He's part of the investigation team. I mean, he holds a title there. He has a job. He has a responsibility. And, you know, I'm going to take his word over David Carrico here who has, you know, a BS degree in Bible studies. And I'm going to take Kenneth Lanning with the FBI over this guy any day of the week. So...
The traditional belief that child molesters should be held responsible for their actions and that the victims are innocent is not accepted by some in our criminal justice system.
That's bullshit. Who in our criminal justice system says that children who are molested are not guilty? Or what did he say?
The traditional belief that child molesters should be held responsible for their actions and that the victims are innocent is not accepted by some in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, so what he's saying is bullshit.
Yeah.
They try to attribute the blame to the victim, minimizing the responsibility of the perpetrator for his actions. A case in point is provided again by Ken Lanning of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Lanning wrote a chapter for the 1992 book on Satanism and ritual abuse called Out of Darkness. The book is currently published by Lexington Books. Lanning's chapter is entitled A Law Enforcement Perspective on Allegations of Ritual Abuse. In it, Lanning writes, "There is another myth that is still with us and is far less likely to be discussed. This is the myth of the victim as a completely innocent little girl walking down the street, minding her own business. It may be more important to dispel this myth than the myth of stranger danger, especially when talking about the sexual exploitation of children in child sex rings. Society seems to have a problem dealing with any sexual abuse case in which the offender is not completely bad or the victim is not completely good. Society seems to find it difficult to deal with child victims who simply behave like human beings and respond to the attention and affection of offenders by voluntarily and repeatedly returning to the offender's home. It confuses us to see the victims in child pornography giggling or laughing. At professional conferences on child sexual abuse, child prostitution is almost never discussed. It is the form of sexual victimization of children most unlike the stereotype of the innocent girl victim. Child prostitutes, by definition, participate in and often initiate their victimization. Furthermore, child prostitutes and the participants in child sex rings are frequently boys. One therapist recently told the author that a researcher's data on child molestation were misleading because many of the child victims in question were child prostitutes. This implies that child prostitutes are not real victims.
How does that imply that?
Huh?
Like he's saying, well, child prostitutes, and then can you just rewind it like 5 seconds?
Sure.
Because many of the child...
All right, so he says the data on child molestation were misleading because many of the children victims in question were child prostitutes. This implies that child prostitutes are not real victims. Wouldn't the whole point of children being in situations of being prostitutes be like they are victims?
Yeah, I think the problem that I have with this is that David Carrico's, I mean, he's taking this out of, I mean, even though he's giving us a whole paragraph, I don't understand in what context he's talking about this, you know, because this is from a whole book. You know, I mean, it sounds like he's saying that often the children may participate in these activities for whatever reason. But it doesn't mean that, I mean, from my perspective, it doesn't mean that the kid is what am I trying to say? It doesn't mean that it's legitimate or it's okay to do it just because the kid may be interested in it or doing it because of prostitution or even voluntarily participating in the activity. It still doesn't make it right. It still makes it illegal activity because children don't understand what they're doing, you know. That's why when you're a legal adult, then you can make decisions for yourself. But if you're under the age of 18, you know, I mean, I think 18 should be the age for it. Some states it's like 16 or 17. But if you're under that age, you're not considered legally to be a responsible adult who can take actions and understand the ramifications of actions, you know, for what you do. And so, yeah, so I mean, if a kid does participate in, you know, sexual activity with an adult, it doesn't make it right. It just means that the kid, for whatever reason, may be participating in it, but it doesn't make it legal. You know, if you're an adult, you still shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, and I think the child is still a victim regardless of any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And saying that, oh, just because the kid knows what they're doing and they're doing it for fun, they're not a victim. That's bullshit right there.
Yeah, I mean, he's taking a quote from a therapist who is quoting on researchers' data. So I don't know. This is like second, third hand interpretation of data. So I'm not quite sure what the context is of. I don't trust his presentation of this statement. So I don't know. I know, but I would agree that if that's what really the researchers' data is saying, then that is bullshit. But I don't know what the context is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he's obviously going to be pulling quotes and using them to support his position. So, all right, let's get on with it.
Victims in question were child prostitutes. This implies that child prostitutes are not real victims. Whether or not it seems fair, when adults and children have sex, the child is always the victim. Examining the thinking of law enforcement officials like Lanning makes me wonder just how far some in the criminal justice system go to protect the rights of the criminal at the expense of the victim. I believe that any attempt to shift any part of the blame away from the perpetrator and onto the child is despicable. Isaiah wrote in chapter 5, verses 20 and 21, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight." In addition to bias within some portions of the criminal justice system, bias exists in secular media as well. A November 29, 1993 article in Time magazine is a good example. The cover story, entitled "Is Freud Dead?" presented a strongly biased negative opinion against the existence of satanic ritual abuse. The article contained the following. If some of the recovered memories of familial childhood abuse sound fanciful, the recollections of satanic ritual abuse are downright bizarre. But could such satanic rituals be that commonplace, let alone exist at all? Yet law enforcement authorities report that not one shred of reliable evidence has turned up to support these claims. No documented marks of torture, no bones of sacrificed adults, infants, or fetuses, and no reputable eyewitnesses. The fact that this article appeared after the previously mentioned convictions were widely publicized demonstrates that some who denied the existence of SRA have not done a credible job of research. It is also the position of this ministry that there is substantial hard evidence to prove the existence of SRA. The examples I have provided are sufficient to convince all who are objective. Only those who don't want to be confused by the facts will continue to deny the obvious. Despite the flood of hard evidence that confirms the reality of satanic crime, the backlash against the existence of SRA continues. It often takes the form of what has come to be known as false memory syndrome. The following quote is also from the Time magazine article, "Is Freud Dead?" An increasing number of recovered memory accusers have recanted, and some have reunited with their families and joined them in suing the therapists and clinics they claim led them astray. Many of them are among the more than 7,000 individuals and families who have sought assistance from the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, a Philadelphia-based organization that has taken the lead in publicizing the wrongdoing and in helping the victims of recovered memory therapy. Pamela Freud, who co-founded FMSF in 1992, has yet to be reconciled with her accuser daughter. The so-called false memory syndrome has become the biggest weapon in the arsenal of those that would deny the existence of SRA.
No, it's the reason why they sued them is because these therapists put these ideas into these people's heads and they believed it, and then they went into court and they testified against these people who were actually innocent. And so that's why they're suing them for it. So I don't understand what his position here is. What he's saying, is he trying to say that these people who recanted, who realized that these were false memories, are that somehow they should have been brought into court? I mean, if you're making up a misleading story and you're lying in court, that's perjury. And that's a serious charge. So, all right, let's see.
The facts concerning false memory syndrome are the following. False memory syndrome is not a recognized medical or psychological diagnosis and does not appear in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM-3, or the soon-to-be-released DSM-4.
That's because it's not a neurological condition.
False memory syndrome is the invention of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. The False Memory Syndrome Foundation was founded in March 1992 by a couple whose daughter, a doctor with degrees in psychology, had privately accused them of sexual abuse and molestation. The daughter did not make her charges public until August of 1993. The False Memory Syndrome Foundation has certainly succeeded in making it more difficult to convict child molesters by discrediting the testimony of children. We believe the motivation for the invention of false memory syndrome becomes apparent when the writings of FMS board member Ralph Underwager are examined. His article was printed in the Journal of Pedophilia, Volume 3, Number 1, 1993. A pedophile is an adult who prefers to have sex with children rather than other adults. Underwager wrote, pedophiles spend a lot of time and energy defending their choice. I don't think that a pedophile needs to do that. Pedophiles can boldly and courageously affirm what they choose. They can say that what they want is to find the best way to love. I am also a theologian, and as a theologian, I believe it is God's will that there be closeness and intimacy, unity of the flesh between people. A pedophile can say, this closeness is possible for me within the choices that I've made. Underwager continued, pedophiles are too defensive. They go around saying, you people out there are saying that what I choose is bad, that it's no good. You're putting me in a prison. You're doing all these terrible things to me. I have to define my love as being in some way or other illicit. What I think is that pedophiles can make the assertion that the pursuit of intimacy and love is what they choose. With boldness, they can say, I believe this is, in fact, part of God's will.
Again, I don't know exactly what I mean, it sounds like this is somebody's statement or what they believe about it. I mean, it sounds like something that somebody who is a pedophile would write this or what would say this. So I don't know what context this comes from, the journal of pedophilia. So I mean, I don't even understand it.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of question is even going around today about, you know, are people who self-identify as pedophiles, should they be considered evil, or should they be prosecuted if they committed no crime? You know, if they're voluntarily celibate, but they still profess this fetish or whatever, should they be, you know, ostracized in community? I think yes. I don't think that this is a thing that should be tolerated in any means, but it is a thing that's out there even today.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard people discuss it and talk about it. And first of all, I think there's a difference between somebody who maybe has that feeling and then somebody who acts on it. I think somebody who acts on it is guilty of pedophilia. They're guilty of molestation of a young boy or young girl. Somebody who maybe has the desire to but doesn't act upon it, I don't think they're guilty of anything. Maybe they have that desire in them, but they don't act upon it. You know, I think that, I mean, maybe my position is rather, you know, maybe it's highly, I don't know, maybe my position is wouldn't be accepted by most people, but I think that if pedophilia has been around for this long, it's probably it's probably something that just occurs in people. Like some people have leanings towards necrophilia, you know, or, you know, I mean, if that's how they are actually attracted towards other, you know, towards children or whatever, if this is something that actually is part of their genetic makeup, then what can they do? There's no way that they can change it, you know? And so I'm sure there's people who don't act upon it, you know, and I don't know exactly what we can do about that. I don't know if there's some way we can, quote unquote, cure them or, you know, give them a child sex robot or what. I mean, I don't know. But as long as they're not actually acting upon it and having sex with children, I mean, I think that's a good thing. I mean, historically, even Rome, Greece, young boys and young girls were, you know, sexually active, you know, even before they were of an adult, what we would consider an adult age. But nowadays, this is what we consider to be an adult age, is, age of 18 or 16. And I think that there's good reason for it. Like I said earlier, if you're under a certain age, you don't understand the ramifications of what you're doing,
Yeah.
And I don't think adults should be put into a situation where they can take advantage of that and then, sleep with a young boy or young girl, and then later on the young boy or young girl suffers traumatic scarring from that,
And to pull this back to the topic, and a lot of, I think what he might be going for here is to tie this to Satanism or to satanic ritual abuse. The Bible and the Quran, all these holy texts involve pedophilia. There's pedophilia in these texts, and it's not condemned explicitly by their gods. So, even today in a lot of Islamic countries, you can take child brides, and it wasn't that was part of Christian theology for a long time as well.
Yeah, and I mean even incest with Lot's daughters,
Right.
I don't know. They don't say exactly what age they were, but sound like they were sort of pretty young. They must have been at least menstruating because they were, they got pregnant. But yeah, they committed incest. They essentially raped their father, and then also became pregnant. So, but again, that's conveniently left out of Bible study.
Underwager's article demonstrates that at least some of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation Board are advocates of pedophilia and possibly other deviant behaviors. This could be why they have an interest in the existence of false memory syndrome. The hard evidence for the existence of SRA does not depend solely upon recovered memories, as some would have us to believe. Recovered memories do, however, play a key role in SRA investigations because the abuse encountered in SRA is so severe that it will force the person to disassociate to deal with the pain. Disassociation is a defense mechanism that develops in people that experience situations that are too severe for them to face. The body is designed to go into shock when harsh experiences are encountered. Many people who are severely injured in automobile accidents don't remember anything except waking up in the hospital. People who are subjected to repeated abuse learn how to imagine themselves to be somewhere else or even to be someone else while the abuse is going on.
Yeah, so this is another thing that they argue. They argue that the people who are involved in these satanic ritual abuse cases develop dissociative disorders, or fractured personalities. And this is something it's schizophrenia and dissociative disorder is something that can happen in people. It doesn't have to be a traumatic experience. And if it does happen to somebody who experiences a traumatic event, it has to be really traumatic. And I don't know how many studies that they've actually done on this, how many people actually have had this done. So I don't know what authority he's talking from. I mean, I definitely don't understand it enough to really say one way or the other. but he's always says that these things happen, but he doesn't offer any real proof for it.
This is disassociation. Repeated disassociation will result in repressed memories and usually MPD or multiple personality disorder. But are all recovered memories to be taken at face value and not questioned? Are some recovered memories false? Consider the following criticism from the Time article, Is Freud Dead? In the course of the therapy, many of these troubled souls conjure up exquisitely detailed recollections of sexual abuse by family members, encouraged by their therapist to reach deeper into the recesses of their memories, often using techniques such as visualization and hypnosis. Some go on to describe events that sorely strain credulity, particularly tales of their forced childhood participation in satanic rituals involving animal and infant sacrifices as well as sexual acts. All recovered memories cannot be taken at face value. There are therapeutic methods which can create delusion in the patient. The altered state is the doorway to the occult. Every person who has been heavily involved in occult practice has experienced altered states of consciousness which were self-induced or were the result of their participation in occult rituals. When a therapist uses methods such as visualization and hypnosis with someone who has experienced altered states of consciousness as a result of occult ritual, it is like throwing gasoline on a fire. The victim can revert back into an altered state of consciousness. In my opinion, such therapy itself constitutes abuse, which can be similar in nature to what the victim has previously experienced.
He's so stiff. He hasn't moved his hands, barely even moves his head. It's just like this talking head, and he has his head at such an angle, like it's just, he's really creepy. Am I the only one who thinks he's creepy?
No,
He's just being really robotic.
Yeah.
Nah, he's terrifying. Are you kidding me?
He's just like, it's like, come on, man, move a little bit. Are you alive?
We do not doubt the integrity or the sincerity of people who use visualization and hypnosis to treat victims of SRA, but we do believe these inappropriate practices can lead to false recovered memories. All recovered memories are certainly not false. The obvious example is the person who has recovered from amnesia. Prior to recovery, they may not know their own name. The fact that they have a spouse and children, as well as other information about their life and identity. However, there are numerous cases where complete recovery has occurred. Sometimes such recovery occurs suddenly, while in other cases, the recovered memories return gradually. There are a number of credible therapists, psychiatrists, and Christian ministries working with SRA victims who do not use visualization or hypnosis. The implication that all recovered memories are the result of visualization or hypnosis is simply false. The Holy Spirit can help us remember. As God heals the hurts, the Holy Spirit can bring back memories. When the person is strong enough to deal with them, God can bring the memories through prayer and spiritual healing.
Yeah, but I'd prefer to stick with a psychologist. All right, maybe here would be a good place to end this this particular video, and maybe we could spend some time answering questions from the chat. Has anybody been keeping an eye on the chat?
I have, yeah.
Yeah? Have you seen any questions?
No real serious questions. Lots of just for jokes kind of questions. So
Okay.
oh man, now I gotta get back into my sitting position.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I don't know. I mean, the video is just really it's really hard to watch because it's just like he's so not animated, and it's just like the stuff he's just throwing this information out there, and it's like he doesn't really spend enough time on each piece of information to really support his case. It's kind of like one of these things, these shows that I see a lot where they just say, well, if I just throw out like 1,000 things, hopefully one of them will stick. And that's just what they do. They just throw a whole bunch of stuff out there, hoping something sticks. And it's like, no, what you want to do is you want to have like maybe one or two actual really strong cases you can use as evidence. You just don't throw a whole bunch of stuff out there.
Yeah, you see that a lot. They always say, "Oh, I'm just interested in the facts. I just want the data. I just want the data, and give me data." But they don't understand the context of anything, and well, they take things out of context, which is what he's doing. it's kind of like that Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme, like Charlie with that board full of notes and drawing the lines everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like all these little lines and everything. It's like, okay, well, what does it mean? Well,
Yeah.
I connected everything. See. Let's see. So if you guys have any questions, if you have any questions about Satanism at the Church of Satan, or Raul's favorite color, or or what is this? What did you post a link in? What is that?
It's that meme.
Oh, it's the meme. Okay. Check out the meme. Oh, yeah. Here. Let me see if I can share this.
That looks like me at work.
What show is this from?
It's, Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, look, he's got Pepe.
Yeah, it's a Pepe Sylvia, I think, episode or something.
Oh man. But it's true. I mean, it's like when you start like going down some of these rabbit holes, it's like it is. It's just kind of like whoops. It is because kind of like, how do you make that connection? And then they use such flimsy evidence to make this connection. It's like it's insane. It's like going down all these rabbit holes. So let's see. What do we got in here? Is Tumblr, left out Tumblr's for porn, glorious random porn. Okay, they're talking about porn. Wonderful. Okay, good.
Which is normal.
Yes, I guess so. For our chat, it is normal, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, there's more than just porn on Tumblr. I mean, I do have, that's where I started, which is kind of sad. But I mean, I still do card readings on there every so often. But Pornhub is for porn.
What is
really weird fucking porn?
Why are girls watching porn? That doesn't make any sense to me. Guys are the perverts. We've got to watch it. Let's see. Somebody made a comment. The Church of Satan? Question mark.
Very
Are they
comfy.
associated with the Church of Capita?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was somebody who made some kind of a comment once, and they had wrote down the Church of Satan.
Oh.
and I was like, what did I say? I said something about I posted something about cloth. It's like like what do you the Church of Satan? And there's like, oh no, I meant Satan. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
I mean, there's a meme that goes around that somebody had spray painted Hell Satin. And a lot of people in like the cosplay community and everything, right? Oh, Satin, you're so hard to sew with, but you're so silky smooth upon our skins. We hail you so much, Satin. It's like when you have dyslexia, but you want to contact the devil.
Yeah, right.
That's appropriate.
Which I will admit, I am one of those people who I do write Satin sometimes instead of Satan when I'm talking to somebody about it, and I'm like, crap, wrong word.
Yeah, that's what spell checker's for. So I'm so if people have any questions, go ahead and type them in there. Interesting to know. But so Raul, what do you do any cosplaying? Probably not, huh?
No.
You don't dress up like a furry on weekends?
Nope, that's not my thing. Not hating on that, but yeah, not me.
I know. I don't either, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't care. Whatever people want to do, if that's what they want to do, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think everyone is still tired from, like, it said brand new years, and everyone's just like, oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
I got to go through one more of these at least. Why is this happening?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping 2018 is going to be better than 2017.
We can hope. It already got off to a great kickstart with YouTube stuff, so yay.
What happened
Oh,
with
you mean like the Logan Paul thing?
Logan Paul and Jake Paul, they're both idiots, but it gives YouTube money. That's why they keep them. That's why they don't demonetize them.
Right. Yeah.
So,
have you heard about that, Raul? The Logan Paul?
Yeah, and well, that's not people saying stuff like, "Oh, Logan Paul, a satanic video, a satanic Japanese ritual, suicide video," and of course that's not anything to do with at all with Satanism.
Yep.
Or people just saying that Logan Paul's an asshole, therefore he's Satan or whatever. It's everyone I don't like is Satan is the general theme.
it's pretty much what
like
goes
the
around.
3 degrees, or what is it? The 6 degrees of Satan.
Yeah.
Instead of the 6 degrees of.
I mean, I won't watch the video because I've seen people reload it and everything, and it's just one of those. It was out of bad taste. He shouldn't have ever posted it, but he did what he did because he knew he was going to get money off of it, regardless of what he did.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
So,
if it was me and that actually happened, I would talk about it in the video, but I wouldn't show it. I would say we went into the forest, like afterwards, maybe like if there was medical crew there or whatever, I probably would have mentioned it in the video, but I definitely would not have shown it out of respect for whoever the family, friends of that person might have been, and also just for the viewers, because you're sort of making a. I don't know. I mean, I think in a sense, it's just bad taste. You just shouldn't say it. You could say afterwards, like, "Hey, we went in there. We actually did find somebody who committed suicide, and so now these people are here and they're going in to retrieve the body or whatever." But I wouldn't actually show it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst part about it is the fact that they had close-ups of it, and the fact that you could tell the person probably had not been deceased for more than 2 weeks. And he didn't blur anything out originally, but he also has he has a lot of young fans that are kids. 11, 10-year-olds, 7-year-olds were seeing these videos because not only most parents don't even care what their kid sees on the internet anymore. And that's the bigger problem is I don't believe there was a warning on the video, and it was at the end, and it was about, well, if you have these feelings, please call this number. And it was, from everything I've seen on the news about it, from what I've seen on other YouTubers covering it, it was just one of those videos that you're like, dude, you have children who watch your channel. I really wish parents would actually pay attention to what the hell their kids are doing.
Yeah.
And that would actually probably solve a lot of problems that's going on, but of course not. Parents sometimes just don't care.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think in the beginning, I think a lot of people were they didn't quite. I mean, I've never heard of this guy. This is the first time I ever heard of him. But they were questioning whether it was real, and who knows. Yeah, I mean, there's just I don't know. There's just so many people on YouTube. I don't watch every single person out, and especially a lot of the big name people on YouTube. I don't really find their content all that interesting. I don't know why they're so popular.
It's kids. It's a lot of kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess they see that trending tab, and that they don't leave that trending tab. They don't go into anything further or do like searches for anything else. They just go by whatever everybody else is ingesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a media. It's that what do we call it? It's a century of computers and technology that everybody thinks that they can trust it, and places will have filters for kids, not necessarily, especially if the places are putting people, say me, for instance, I say fuck a lot. And I'm obviously not considered family friendly, but if they didn't notice that I said fuck a lot, and they put me under a family friendly filter, you don't care because your kids, it's supposed to be family friendly until you finally hear somebody say that word or show something they shouldn't show. And then there's an uproar about it. And I think that was one of the main problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was reviewed by a person at YouTube, and they're like, oh, I don't see anything wrong with this video. And they allowed it to continue being #1 trending. I think that was the biggest problem right there. Yeah. And it just goes to show that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was just going to say, I think YouTube is probably going to get to the point where they're probably going to have ratings. They're going to have, like, you know, NC-17 or R or whatever different ratings for videos. And I think that's probably going to happen pretty. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking it might happen. I don't know exactly when, but I don't know how they would verify if somebody was of a certain age to watch a certain video. But I'm thinking it'll probably get to that point because I don't know. I mean, it's just how they got with music. It's how they went with television. It's how they went with music. It's how they do it with movies. And I'm thinking probably eventually it's probably going to happen that way, maybe with the internet or at least YouTube itself.
Yeah. And there's actually now a question in the chat from Rays.
Oh, okay.
For Raul. Raul, do you think racism, radical Islamic is enough of a threat to call for reforming of our immigration policy? What is the best way to combat the radical Islamic?
Okay, radical Islamic. Well, I mean, I don't know much about policy or anything like that to really comment on that, but I do think that radical Islam is a problem, and I think part of the solution is to talk about it, is to not shy away from pointing it out, not shy away from calling it what it is. I mean, to me, in some ways, I'm not even a big fan of the term radical Islamic terrorism because it's actually part of Islam. It's not radical in any real way. It is part, jihad is part of that religion. It is in the holy text. It is a big part of that history, of the history of that religion. It is a religion of conquest. It has been for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Well, not thousands, but many hundreds. But it's, you know, people look at the Crusades and think of it as just a one-sided war of just Europe invading the Middle East. But, you know, they also invaded much of Asia and into Europe. I mean, this was a very war-like religion, and that still continues to this day. So I think we should call it out. We should identify it, but at the same time, you know, realize that you know, just in general, bigotry is not probably a good way of approaching that too, because you could alienate people who could want to help squash that in their own communities. So I mean, it's, again, I'm not going to comment on policy because I just don't know the effects of the policy one way or another. So don't know about that. But in general, I do think we should talk about it and not shy away from it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems with it is that people are afraid to talk with it. And I do believe there has to be a lot of reformation. I think that Christianity has gone through a lot of reformation, and I think that Islam is the same thing. There's a lot of sects of Islam too, but I think that there are some that are, I think they need to go through a lot of reformation in themselves. And I think that a lot of the taboo subject that's very much in the political climate needs to go away, because it's an honest problem. I mean, all problems we need to honestly be able to talk about, whatever the problem is, whether it be racism, sexism, you know, religious conflict, whatever. We need to be able to talk about it in a professional setting so that we can address what is the actual underlying problems there and resolve them. If you can't talk about a problem, how can you ever possibly resolve it?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that in discussing policy, I think it should be something that's discussed out in the open. I think all options should be examined and not be avoided out of political correctness. So I do think, even though I'm not exactly sure how the policy should play out, but I do think that you shouldn't shy away from discussing it or weighing all options out of fear of being, called a racist or something like that, or Islamophobic or something like that. Like, no, look at the data, look at the facts, look at the statistics, and see what kind of policy would work best in these situations. With, of course, within the, if we're talking about America, within the Constitution. So I think those things should be looked at objectively. But I think that can be a problem too, is the fear of talking about it, to being deemed a racist or something.
Yep. All right. Well, it's just about that time. So if there's no other questions, we went all over the place today. We started out with SRA and then went on over to national policy on religion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I will say that I don't think that, there should be like religion tests or anything like that. I think that's kind of stupid, because that kind of policy can easily be used against, minority religions, could be used against Satanism, could be used against pagans, could be used, I mean, depending on who's in power, that can easily be applied to me, or to one of you. So I think that that puts a little too much trust in the government, which is something I've always questioned. So that's why, when I talk policy, it's always like in the context of, well, who's implementing that policy, who's enforcing that policy, and how easily can that be manipulated. So
Yeah.
Definitely. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Raul. It was great to have you on again. And sorry, this video was just it was kind of painful to watch.
Yeah. I think there's a Satanic Panic video on Netflix, but I don't know if you can stream Netflix on this. So
I don't think we could.
Yeah, but yeah, there's some crazy ones out there. I know you may have covered them already, where they talk about Dungeons and Dragons and
yes.
Yeah. So
well, if you ever do come across a video you think would be exciting for us, let us know.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe we could have you on again, and we could go over it. And
sure, would love to do that. Yeah.
You're going to be like our recurring guest.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, thanks all. It was wonderful. We will see you all next week, and we don't know what's planned for next week, but it should be exciting, whatever it is.
I do have the new Jackbox Party Pack, so we could do that next week.
You have the what?
That might be a good idea.
How we did for those games before. I own the newest one right now.
Oh, okay.
Jackbox Party Pack 4. So that's one option. So we'll let the chat decide and everything. So
yeah, we haven't had a game night for a while.
No, we haven't. I mean, we had 2 weeks off basically because of holidays.
Yep.
What is that? Jackbox?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I own them all and I stream it about once a month for everybody on here. So
have you ever played Jackbox?
No. What is it?
It's a whole bunch of games where all you need is your cell phone and to be watching our show, and you can participate in everything. Like, it could be anything from trying to make the most outrageous lie to trying to do the best answer out of maybe 2 or 3 questions. So,
all right, cool.
It's a lot of fun. Like, you can join us sometimes. So,
yeah, it's actually a lot of fun, and also people from our audience join in too.
Yeah, all right, I'm down for that.
Yeah, okay. No, are you available next Sunday?
I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. We'll be in touch.
Okay, all right. We'll talk. We'll talk. Sounds good. All righty, y'all. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Night all.
Blessed be all.
Good night.
All right. Whoops.